What's up, guys? Welcome back to the LTL Podcast. I'm here with Steve,
Hello.
and this is going to be our season finale. Well, technically, I guess, our season wrap-up. This will be the last episode we're considering an episode of the 2020-2021 season. Every episode from here on out will be 2021-2022 NHL season. So before we get started, just wanted to extend our condolences to the friends, family, teammates, and loved ones of the late goaltender for the Columbus Blue Jackets, Mattis Kivlenieks. He passed away in an unfortunate accident over 4th of July weekend. So just want to extend our thoughts and well wishes and positive energy to his friends, family, teammates, and loved ones. Just a very unfortunate and tragic situation for everyone involved. So we are thinking of him and everyone involved. So just wanted to kind of mention that right off the bat. As well, obviously, I just want to get this out of the way because I'm going to be saying some very not nice things about the Tampa Bay Lightning, okay? And I imagine that you might have some thoughts on this as well, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to get this out of the way. Congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning, okay? Regardless of the circumstances, repeating as Stanley Cup champions is never easy. In fact, I mean, we've only had, 3 teams do it in the last 25 years or so?
Yeah, something like that.
Because the Pens did it in 16-17, obviously the Lightning this year in 2020-21, and I think the last team before that was the Red Wings. So it's never an easy thing to do, okay? The Tampa Bay Lightning are, in their current state, arguably the most talented team and the most skilled hockey team with elite players at every single position. I'm not taking any of that away from them. So, congratulations on the cup run. Congratulations on back-to-back. And just know that everything I'm about to say isn't necessarily coming from a place of hatred for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but rather a place of respect for the integrity and out of love of the game of hockey, more so. Because I would be mad about any team doing what the Lightning did, which I don't think needs to be explained at this point. I'm pretty sure everyone who watches hockey knows what happened, right?
Right.
So it's not necessarily out of a hatred for the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's more of because I care about the game so much. All of that being said, is it just me, or does this feel like probably the least earned Stanley Cup that we've had in our current viewing time?
I mean, it felt all but honestly, going to the season, it felt like there was no other team that was the obvious favorite to win a Stanley Cup. And it's not even just because they won last year. Tampa Bay won last year and kept most of the same roster intact. So I don't know. It just it wasn't much of a surprise to me. And I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't watch a lot of the playoff, a lot of the Stanley Cup final after Montreal went down 3-0. I was like, well, that's that. What everybody knew was gonna happen is gonna happen.
It's just when I say the least earned, obviously I'm heavily referring to the situation with Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos. And listen, I get it, right? Tampa Bay Lightning fans are going to go to bat for their team. The NHL media has to act ignorant, They have to act like this team did something special and they did it completely 100% legit. They have to be that way. They can't acknowledge the situation. I get that, right? You can't go on air and start talking about it because the NHL doesn't want you to talk about it. But it's just not good. I think it's not good for the game for this to be happening. It's not interesting. And like you even said, even a diehard hockey fan like yourself was disinterested in the Stanley Cup Finals because it felt so cheap in a way, And that's nothing on the Montreal Canadiens. It has more to do with the fact that the Lightning did what they did. Am I wrong about that?
No, I mean, I loved watching the Habs underdog story, but as soon as the Lightning got to the Stanley Cup final, I was like, all right, well, that's that then. Like, nobody's going to stop them now, you know? And it
And
was just kind of boring. I don't know.
to me, there was just a sense of like, how can I get excited about this team knowing that they essentially did what they did? Like, it's like watching the Houston Astros after the cheating scandal. Like, am I supposed to be excited to watch the Houston Astros? No. Am I supposed to be excited to watch a team ice a roster of $98 million? No. It's just, it's ridiculous. And I also just want to go on record and say that Nikita Kucherov is one of the most classless players in the entire NHL, okay? The comments that he made after he won, I don't care how drunk he was. It's a joke, okay? He's an absolute loser for saying what he did. And really, in an odd way, it's kind of self-reflective on the fact that the Lightning were playing in what sounded like a dead building for a lot of the finals. Like, you shouldn't have to hand out noisemakers and rattle paddles to get your building to be loud in the Stanley Cup Finals. You shouldn't. But they did. Like, they had to. And Kucherov going out and saying, well, the Habs fans acted like they won the cup after the Game 4 overtime winner. Yeah, your team just won a game in overtime in the Stanley Cup Finals. What did you expect them to do? Just, like, politely clap and then leave?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I don't know what he was expecting.
This
Is my problem with a lot of these teams that end up, like, becoming quote-unquote dynasty teams, right? I had the same issue with Drew Doughty after they won their second Stanley Cup in 2014 when they asked him, well, Drew, how did you feel about the season? He's like, oh, I knew back in February we were going to win a Stanley Cup. There's not a team in the league that could stand up against us, blah, blah, blah. Like, this was easy. And I was like, bro, shut the fuck up. Like, you have to show some respect to the team that went out there, bro. Like, and John Cooper is also famous for this, so this might just be an extension of his personality finally, like, showing through the team. But, like, he's been a guy that's never willing to, like, give another team, like, credit when they beat him or if they do something well and force his team to make mistakes. His thing is always, well, we didn't do our thing, but, he never is willing to give credit to the team for actually, like, forcing his team to make mistakes, and I think that's kind of shitty. And by extension, now his team is doing something similar.
It just really kind of bothers me. Like, I get being confident, right? And I get having a sense of pride after winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. But when you won it the way that you did, in the way that you did, knowing all of the controversy that you, personally, Nikita Kucherov, as a player have generated, don't you think you would show a little bit of humility and a little bit of respect towards the Montreal Canadiens? Like, don't you think after battling them for 5 games, you would sit down and say, you know what? That was one of the best runs we've ever seen from an underdog. I mean, they were the 8th seed to get all the way to here against all those teams. They had to be, good for them. What a great season, great series. No, like, you sit down and all you have to do is talk smack about the fact that their fans were excited after an OT win. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Like, Nikita Kucherov is, over the course of basically the playoffs since the start to the end, has become, like, one of my least favorite players in the NHL. Like, he's now top 5, like, least favorite human beings in the National Hockey League. Like, it's just a friggin' joke. Like, it's a mess. It's a total mess. Like, there's a difference between being confident and just being an asshole, especially when you're essentially, like, the reason that there was so much controversy in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like, why? I don't get it. I really don't.
it almost feels like an entitlement thing. Like he feels like it almost feels like the Tampa Bay was, expecting. It was almost like they felt like this was their cup, and anything standing between them and their Stanley Cup was like a joke almost. Like, you know, the put down on the Habs, and then honestly, by the way they acted on the ice, like, you know, he taking those dives and getting his stick up, and just honestly, just all around being kind of an asshole. Like, he just, I don't know, he just really like left a sour taste. He's just not.
Yeah,
And it's not like the Sidney Crosby bad taste where he's just so good and like he used to complain a little, so like whatever. It's just like, no, you're just kind of a scumbag, bro. Like you sat out like what, 6 weeks when you were healthy, pretending to be hurt, so you can come back in the playoffs and put your team over the fucking salary cap by over $12 million. Like what? It's just unreal.
yeah, it really is a situation where you know, I'm
To your
not
point
expecting
though,
him to like come out and apologize for it. Obviously, I'm
no.
not. I'm not that stupid. I don't think Kucherov should come out and say like my bad for evading the salary cap. But by the same token, wouldn't you think he would sit down and have a little humility and be like, you know what? Honestly, maybe what we did was a little scummy. So like, instead of running my mouth, why don't I just give props and just like lay low for a little bit?
See, but that would imply that he has like any level of integrity, right? Because what hockey player is going to get healthy with 6 weeks left to go in the season and say, no, it's okay, I'll sit out? You know, to me, that shows like a lack of integrity on their part.
I
Just
mean,
because, like,
like you can't keep most hockey players off the ice when they're hurt. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, so imagine with, and they were in a pretty tight race for a little while there when he was injured. So I don't know why he'd be willing to sit out and wait.
yeah, and that's also an organizational thing to me too. Like Julien Brisebois has got to be one of like the scummier individuals in hockey at this point. Because there's no doubt in my mind he was like, hey, well, if you sit out, we don't have to waive Tyler Johnson. So like maybe your ankle starts to hurt a little bit this week and you can't come back yet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a joke, and for the Lightning fans that are gonna be upset and start making comments, like I get it. I'm not mad at you guys for going to bat for your team because it's your team and you have to do what you got to do. But as a hockey fan, you have to know that what your team did was, we'll say, questionable at best and actually damaging to the sport at worst. And it's just really unfortunate that a team that honestly didn't need to do this at all because they're good enough to win a Stanley Cup under the salary cap, you know, a team that didn't need to do what they did, stoop to the level that they did to kind of just leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth about the whole situation. So I don't know. It's just unfortunate that that's really the case. But when I did my regular season wrap up, I kind of talked about what the season really like represented to me. Like every season, you kind of look back and say, well, this was the season that this happened, or this is what I remember most about this season. So like, what about this past season is really gonna like stick out to you the most?
Honestly, this might be the most anticlimactic season overall of hockey, just because there really weren't any surprises in terms of like the teams that made the playoffs and won divisions, right? Like Minnesota was the biggest like surprise, really, to make the playoffs, and they might lose Kirill Kaprizov now, so who knows how like if that's really gonna stick or not.
Yeah.
But I guess like otherwise, it kind of shook out like almost exactly as we saw it, right? Like maybe a team overachieved a little bit here and there, but there was no like Cinderella runs outside of the Montreal Canadiens, and that was just they got red hot in the playoffs, and that was it, you know? Because through the first 5 games with Toronto, they looked like okay. They didn't look great. It wasn't until like the second half of that series where they caught fire and then won, went all the way.
Yeah, I think, what I said about this past season really represents to me is like, I think this is the season where we saw, at least in my recollection, like the most controversies around the NHL, between, the Tom Wilson incidents with George Parros and Department of Player Safety, obviously the Tampa Bay Lightning controversy, the controversy about the officiating and the lack of, or I should say, the officiating or lack thereof.
Quality of the officiating.
Yeah, like there's just a lot of this, like, I just don't remember any single season where I was logging onto Twitter every day and just seeing like some new controversy surrounding the NHL popping up,
Yeah,
Um,
I know what you're saying.
it's just a very, very bizarre season, but it's a season that I don't think will register in my memory banks as long as last year's did, just because last year's was so bizarre. And to your point, this year's, especially the ending just being so anticlimactic, was just kind of a bummer, really.
Well, I think the real thing was it was like the new divisions were kind of just throwaways. Like people were talking about like, oh, they're gonna make new rivalries, and it's like, yeah, for one season, and then everyone's going back to their regular divisions, and they're never gonna see each other. So it doesn't really, some games felt like, especially when like teams were very clearly out of it, like when you have teams like Ottawa and Vancouver, and like they just got beat up night after night after night. It was just like, all right, like it was kind of just hard to gauge which teams were for real and which ones weren't, because every division had like 2 or 3 teams that were like almost guaranteed wins at some point in this season, And when you can get 12 free wins off those teams, it was just like it was just hard to tell. So to me, it was really anticlimactic because at the end of the day, like it was you didn't know who was good and who wasn't. Like Toronto looked like gangbusters and they lose to Montreal in the first round. Like it was just such a crapshoot.
Yeah, and I'm very much looking forward next year to going back to a more like standard situation, getting to watch, a lot more different matchups instead of every night just being like, well, what divisional matchup is it tonight? Like the divisional matchups are cool and all, but I don't want to watch the same team 8 times a year anymore. Like, I get that they did what they had to do, and I totally appreciate the NHL going out of their way to make it happen. Which, by the way, kudos, congratulations to the NHL for the season getting done.
Without any major hiccups, really.
Outside of a really rough start for some teams like the Stars and a really, really, really rough patch for the Canucks, they really pulled most of it off without any severe hitches. So, congrats to the NHL for that. You know, just a really, really good job dealing with everything going on. But, you know, somebody brought up, obviously the situation would return to where every team plays every team in the league at least twice like it was before.
Right.
But somebody brought up the idea that they could keep the current divisions. Would that be something that you were opposed to as well?
Yeah, I just think it doesn't make sense geographically, honestly. Like, you had the Tampa Bay teams in the Central Division. Like, they don't make much more sense being in the Atlantic, but at least, like, when you separate everything out, it's mostly not fair to the Canadian teams because half of them are on the West Coast. So when you have, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal having to travel to Calgary, Quebec, or Calgary, Winnipeg, and Edmonton and Vancouver, it's just like, it's just kind of like defeats the purpose. Like, I think the geographic rivalries that exist in the NHL are so strong that you might want to just keep them. And they put these original divisions, like the old ones, I guess now that we're going back to, together to try to maximize the division, like the geographic rivalries in the league. So I also think it would be funny if Detroit, if they kept these, Detroit would be back in the West after fighting for I don't know how many years to get into the Eastern Conference.
to get out of the West. Yeah.
So that's really just how I feel about it. I think like if the NHL is really serious and like they want to do more division-based rivalries and like they want to really reignite some like I guess fan passion now that fans are going to be allowed back. The original divisions we had are probably our best bet because you're going to have teams like the division that the Rangers are in. It includes four of our biggest rivals. The only one that's really not there is Boston, and we still play Boston 4 times a year because they're in the conference. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think going back to the old divisions is the way to go. Not to mention they took a player poll and like 78% of the players said they didn't want to keep the current divisions. Something crazy like that. So I think there's pretty much no doubt that we're going back to the old divisions. And I think it's better, like you said, just in terms of like travel time, like you said, for the Canadian teams, it would just suck having to, fly east-west like 4 times a year. Or 3 times a year, sorry, because we play each other 6 times. That would just be like absolute trash, honestly, in terms of their travel budget. And, you do lose some of those rivalries. Like if you move the division around, like you lose the Boston-Montreal rivalry, which is one of the best rivalries in the entire sport. So I think the old division is the way to go.
Toronto-Detroit rivalry, which is another great original 6 rivalry that exists, but
Boston, Toronto, aka well now currently both teams can't really get out of the first 2 rounds, so yeah, I think it's better to go back to the old division. I mean, they've already basically more or less announced that they're going to. I was just curious what you would think, but the only team that kind of screws actually is the Phoenix Coyotes.
Well, because they get sent to the Central.
Because this hot shot new expansion team gets added to the Pacific and they get booted back to the Central that they hated being in because of all their travel expenses. So they get kind of shanked.
But if we've learned anything, it's the league does not give a shit about the Arizona Coyotes. Or the well-being of that franchise.
They only care about it when it comes to rumors about them being moved. Then the NHL will go to like hell and back to keep the Coyotes in Arizona for some reason.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they'll literally go to war with like heaven and hell in order to keep the team in Arizona. But as soon as they like make sure it stays, they're like, okay, yeah, you're on your own now. Goodbye.
Goodbye. So I will say I'm very, very, very excited for this offseason because this offseason has so much potential for insanity. And we've already heard the rumors about Jack Eichel, obviously. Now, apparently, Vladimir Tarasenko wants out. He's apparently asked for a trade. We have some super free agents, essentially, like Dougie Hamilton, who might
be... Jones is on the market.
Yeah, so Dougie Hamilton and Seth Jones might be on his way out. So, what are you most looking forward to this offseason? I mean, there's going to be a busy offseason between the expansion draft, another entry draft, and then apparently like every big superstar just wants to get traded all at once. So, like, what are you most looking forward to this offseason?
I think, honestly, it doesn't sound weird, but I think I want to see how teams like manage to fit under this cap. Like, I want to see what creative accounting teams come up with this time, because I don't think the league is going to let that long-term injured reserve loophole exist for too much longer. Like, there's no way they're going to let a team do what Tampa Bay did this year again, So, I'm curious to see like how teams are going to find ways of fitting under the cap, and if maybe we're going to see like contract values have been like inflating for so many years because the cap keeps going up and up and up, right?
Yeah.
But now that the cap is stagnated and flat, I wonder if you're going to start seeing like the value of contracts regress a little bit, like maybe the top end stars are still going to be making their big money, but I wonder if we're going to see like almost like a wealth gap in the league now, like if it's going to affect the guys at the bottom because otherwise most teams aren't going to be able to field NHL rosters if they can't if these guys are going to ask for like what is considered fair value, you know?
It's kind of like serendipitous almost in a way that the Seattle Kraken are coming in right now because we know that teams love to use expansion teams as basically dumpsters like for bad contracts. So I imagine that it's going to be a very aggressive market to try to get in on that Seattle Kraken salary cap essentially. So I'm curious as to what the price of salary cap is going to be this season because last season we saw it hovering around second and third round picks is what teams like Detroit and Ottawa were getting for eating bad contracts.
Thanks again for eating Mark Stahl's contract.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So like I wonder what it's going to be this like do you think we might see teams like trading bad contracts with like a first round pick?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. There's some there's some really terrible contracts that some teams are really hard pressed to get rid of, you know? So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if teams like Minnesota are trying to take advantage, if LA isn't trying to take advantage to move out maybe somebody like Dustin Brown. I mean, even the Islanders, I would be surprised if they weren't trying to make a move here. But I think the Islanders would be better off making like a three-way trade for Tarasenko because they were on his list of note of teams.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for both really the Islanders and the Rangers, but for different reasons. You know, one because the Islanders are so pressed up against the cap ceiling at this point. You know, it's like we're right there on all these bad contracts coming off the books. Like we just need one or two more seasons, but you know, you're running out of time, so
Well, if you ask Joe, all the Islanders need to do is trade Leo Komarov. It's so easy.
yeah, I wish it was that easy. We need to dump,
Yeah.
you know, one of either Jordan Eberle, Josh Bailey, or Nick Leddy is going this offseason because we can't afford that $5 million on the books. And I think the indication right now is that it's Josh Bailey who's going to be traded because we have some young forwards who need more playing time, aka Oliver Wahlstrom, Kiefer Bellows, et cetera, right? I think that Bailey's going to be traded, and I think we might try to pawn off the Leo Komarov contract onto the Seattle Kraken. And then even then, we're still going to be kind of butting heads with the roof at that point. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what the Islanders do this offseason. And then conversely for the New York Rangers, you know, if I pull up their cap friendly here, shout out to Cap Friendly, by the way, one of the best resources available. You know, the Rangers are currently going to be sitting on like $23 million in cap space. um, you know, you have some contracts that are going to be decent hits to the books, like the Bushnevich contract, but nothing really honestly too crazy. So, you know, the Rangers on the opposite end of the spectrum are going to be kind of swimming in money, essentially. Um,
I just hope they're smart with it.
well, I mean, what are you looking forward to the Rangers doing? Like, what is on your wish list, I guess, for this offseason?
Well, I mean, I guess. I mean, the Rangers. There's no surprise. It's no secret the Rangers need to get tougher, right? But the way I'm looking at it is like people are acting as if this Rangers team is at the very end of their rebuild, like ready to take that next step and be a Stanley Cup contender, which is usually when you start adding all of your grit and your grit and your toughness because you're looking to go deep. And like you do need a little bit of grit here and there, but like to me, the obsession that the Rangers have this offseason with adding grit really is starting to scare me because I'm worried that they're going to throw out the process and start drafting guys for reasons other than their talent. It's kind of like what they did with Elias Anderson at seventh overall. They're like, well, he's like the most ready to play now, but he's not the best player available. It's like, okay, but we're at the point where we should still be taking the best available players before we start drafting by position and stuff like that. That being said, I would like to see the Rangers maybe add a little bit more defensive depth up front, like forwards, like defensive forwards. Losing Jesper Foss really kind of hurt. And I mean, I don't know if there's really anything the Rangers need other than just time, to grow into like the league. A lot of these kids are rookies or their second year in the league, and it doesn't help that like our veterans really didn't do anything to start the year. So
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you have to sign Igor Shesterkin this year. Do you think that this is the last season we see Alexander Georgiev on Broadway?
unfortunately, probably yeah,
So if you're trading Georgiev, what are you looking to get back for him?
probably a number three center, like a bona fide number three.
Do you have anyone like particular in mind?
I mean, like Tyson Jost's name's been thrown around recently out of Colorado. I wouldn't mind. I mean, the Rangers could use a number two center, and a guy like Nazem Kadri would be really nice. But if the Rangers' goal is to make the playoffs, then you probably should stay away from Kadri. As soon as the calendar clicks over to the playoffs, he becomes a heat-seeking missile.
I it's that's another team that's going to be very interesting to watch this offseason is the
Do you
Colorado
think they signed
Avalanche.
Grubauer?
That's the big question, right? Like, what do you do with Philip Grubauer, who's apparently, you know,
Is it a real deal?
a hot topic over there in Colorado? They're apparently wanting to trade Nazem Kadri, which the ironic part is a team like the Colorado Avalanche in that series against the Vegas Golden Knights, and just in general, a team as skilled as the Colorado Avalanche need a center like Nazem Kadri. The problem is he's never on the ice. Like, he can't help you win a Stanley Cup when he's watching from the press box. So
No.
the question then becomes, do you trade Nazem Kadri to then, I guess, just sign another center just like him? I mean, it's possible, I guess. You're just like, well, we want Kadri, but just not him. Like,
Well, I mean, if Montreal's as serious about letting Philip Deneau walk as it seems like they are, then I mean he's a great replacement to have. If I'm Colorado.
which I don't understand that. Like, why would you let him go?
Because Mark Bergevin's got a big plan that you know none of us can seem to decipher.
I guess it's also a good question is, I always ask this one whenever the teams get eliminated, but what does the end of this season really mean for Montreal? Like, where do they stand realistically going into next season? Or even going into this offseason?
I mean, if I'm them, I'm looking, and I have any money, I'm looking to add up front. Like they need some firepower because defensively they were amazing all playoff long, but they just couldn't score goals, man. Like, and you saw like they struggled. They struggled against every team they played to score goals for the most part, but like they really struggled against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, it was bad.
You know, I hate to sound like a Debbie Downer and like a doubting Thomas or anything, but I think Montreal should look at this last season's run realistically and say, yeah, we need to make this team better because if we come back with the same roster, this isn't happening again. I mean, let's be honest here. If this was a regular season in the NHL, they would not have been in the playoffs. They probably would have been on the outside looking in based on points because the Lightning, Panthers, and Leafs would have taken the top three spots, and then the Bruins would have taken a wild card, and then the Islanders, Penguins, Capitals, and Hurricanes would have taken 4 spots in the Metro. So the Canadians would have been on the outside looking in. They never would have even been in the playoffs. So to your point, I think Mark Bergevin needs to look at this and say, well, we can't just sit back and say we have a great team because honestly, we really kind of don't. Like, we got hot at the right time, yes, but if this team goes back out on the ice in the regular season, we wouldn't be in the playoffs. So I know that I was a guy last season who was saying that in the offseason, Montreal needs to tear it down and rebuild. And to a certain extent, I still think that the window for Montreal really never opened, honestly. The window kind of just cracked a little bit. And they're kind of looking at like a ray of sunshine coming through. And that ray of sunshine is called Carey Price's Twilight Years. And as soon as that ray of sunshine goes away, aka as soon as Carey Price starts to decline, like that window's going to slam shut again. But I guess, there's no harm in really trying to take advantage of the window while it's kind of there. So, I mean, they definitely need scoring up front. I mean, that's no doubt. There's not, if there's any one team in the NHL besides the Islanders who need scoring up front, it's the Montreal Canadiens. And I would love for them to just go out and get a second line center and just throw a line of Suzuki, Caulfield, and some other random second liner out there, because like how good were Suzuki and Caulfield in the playoffs, man? Like, God, they were just so electric.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like Montreal really has to be smart here. They can't sell the farm right now. Like they still have a lot of young guys that they're looking to work into the lineup. So if they take a step backwards next year, which is almost inevitable, right? Like there's no way they're going to get to the top of the mountain again next year. It's just going to be very hard in that division that they're going to be in. So like the inevitable step backwards next year shouldn't be seen, in my opinion, as like something to like pull the lever and sound the alarm over. It should just be natural, because realistically, their goal next season should be just to make the playoffs. Because in the Atlantic Division, it's going to be significantly harder because you don't have Vancouver and Ottawa to beat up on 16 times or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, you're also not just only fighting within your division for a playoff spot.
No, now you have to worry about the Metro Division, which seems kind of stacked.
Let's be honest here. Most of the teams in the Metro are going to be the same, if not better, than they were last year. Like, we're kind of forgetting that the Flyers kind of took a season off for some reason. So if the Flyers are as good as they should be on paper, the Metro is really going to have 5 teams, Islanders, Penguins, Capitals, Hurricanes, Flyers, and then you add obviously the Rangers into that mix, who, again, much like last season, just they turned the clock on a little bit too late, unfortunately, and they kind of just ran out of runway. You're going to have 6 teams in the Metro vying for those 3 playoff spots. Plus, honestly, the Metro might be good enough to take the other 2 away from the Atlantic. So, you're not just contending with the underperforming Calgary Flames and the underperforming Vancouver Canucks. Now you have to contend with the other divisions, which are just as good. So, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that them getting to the Stanley Cup Finals was a fluke, because they earned it. They earned every single step. I mean, for them to go out and do what they did and come back from 3-1 down against the Maple Leafs, sweep the Winnipeg Jets, and then beat the Vegas Golden Knights is nothing short of spectacular.
I mean, it was a miracle, right? They had their miracle run. They just ran out of magic right at the end. And to be fair, the magic they lost was called $18 million over the salary cap.
Right, exactly. And
like when they played honest hockey teams, they beat them.
Yeah, and it's not like the Lightning were $18 million over the salary cap because of some like schleb player who's making like $8 million on a bad contract. Like, it was Nikita Kucherov, and he made a significant difference in the Tampa Bay Lightning's run. So, again, I'm not saying it's a fluke, but what I'm saying is you can't look at that result and say, well, we expect the same core to return the same results, because it's not going to happen.
No.
And I think that as the Canadiens, you're at a crossroads again this offseason. You either need to make a decision to go for it and you go all in, or you make a decision to say, well, we got this far, but maybe let's start to transition into the next phase. And I think what you do is you go into next season, you sell out, try to buff the team. And if they fail next season, then you can take your step back and say, well, okay, Carey Price is 34, Shea Weber's 36, Petrie's 34. Maybe this is time we start to transition this organization. But
Speaking of transitions, though, how good would a guy like Dougie Hamilton look in Montreal? I mean, it would solve a lot of their problems because their power play was not good. Dougie Hamilton is nothing if not a power play quarterback,
I mean, that blue line would be absolutely stacked. Like,
It'd be AIDS, bro. Oh my god.
like you're telling me you
'Cause
have
you
a
can move
blue
Petrie to your
line.
number 2 unit.
Yeah, you have a blue line of Weber, Hamilton, Petrie, Sherratt, Edmondson, Romanov. Hello.
That also includes Victor Mete, who was kind of this year.
He's in Ottawa now.
Oh, that's right. You're right. He got waived.
Yeah. They waived him. He's in Ottawa.
They gave up on him.
Like,
yeah.
apparently he's just a bust. Like, I don't know what happened to this kid. Like, he was one of the best defensemen the Canadians had 2 seasons ago, and now he's just, like, fell off
It looks
a
kind of
cliff.
like Adam Larson almost. Like, Adam Larson had a really similar career to me. He came over, he had like that meteoric rise, and then instead of getting waived, he got traded. But then he was just never the same player. But I wonder if in Victor Mete's case specifically, I wonder if they got blinded by how amazing he was in his rookie season and how above water he was playing. That their expectations just never came back down to earth. Because I don't think he did that terribly in Ottawa, from what I saw.
It might have also been a case of he was the best player on a bad team, so he shined excessively because essentially he was like a gold coin in a pile of turds. Like, you're
True.
gonna be
I mean,
like,
how many
oh,
times
hey.
have we seen that?
You're gonna be like, hey, that's a gold coin, even though it's only worth 1 gold. It's still a lot better than sticking my hand in dog poop.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what was another player that had that kind of that happened to recently. That got a lot of hype just because they were really good on a bad team, and then they went somewhere else and just flopped.
I'm thinking. I know it's the Gosh darn it, the guy from Columbus, not Nick Foligno. I mean, to a certain extent, kind of Nick Foligno, but
Oh, Ryan DeZinkel?
yeah.
Oh yeah, he's in Carolina now.
Who's not a bad
Yeah.
player, but everyone's like, he's the next 40 goal scorer. It's like, what?
He scored 25 goals once.
It's
like,
like, what are we talking about? Why is he the next Wayne Gretzky? I missed it.
the problem was at the problem was that he had that great year and a year that everybody knew Ottawa was getting ready to sell everything. I mean, it was great for Ottawa. Ottawa got to sell really fucking high on him,
Yeah.
They were able to send him and Matt Duchene to Columbus. What?
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, so I was gonna say, isn't the expansion draft next week? The week after?
I can tell you right now because I actually bookmarked the expansion draft. So yeah, that is actually something I've been mentioning over and over again. To keep an eye on this channel because we will be doing a live reaction to the expansion draft. It is July 21st. And the NHL entry draft is 2 days after that. So, we will be doing a live reaction to the expansion draft because I don't think it's going to be that long, honestly. Maybe an hour, which is kind of
it was only an hour last time because it's only the 31 picks.
Which is kind of average length for our podcasts anyway. So we're doing a live reaction to the expansion draft, and then obviously after that we'll do the same thing as last year. We'll do the live reaction to the top 10 picks in the NHL entry draft. But what do you think? I guess continuing with this theme of I guess we're doing an off-season preview kind of situation. What do you expect out of the Seattle Kraken? Do you think we're going to end up with another team like the Vegas Golden Knights where it's kind of a middling mix of mid-six players who put it together, or do you think we're going to see a more traditional
I
expansion
think this one's
draft.
going to be a little more traditional of an expansion because I don't think general managers are going to be as nice this time around. I mean, for that Vegas draft was kind of wild. Like teams were kind of just handing them players. It seemed like they got Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault from Florida for some reason. Like so, the way George McPhee was able to kind of fleece teams in last time around, I don't think it's going to happen this time. I think general manager, general managers now are going to be a little more savvy about who they have to protect. I mean, the league has made it easier for these expansion teams to make the transition into the NHL. I mean, if you look at like the expansion teams from like the 70s and 80s, like they were winning like maybe 15 games a year, like they were terrible. So the NHL is like guaranteed that that's never going to happen again. These teams are going to be somewhat competitive right off the bat, but I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. I really don't see anybody like out there that's going to pop off the same way that like guys like William Karlsson and Riley Smith and Marchessault did for Vegas in that first year. I mean, they might end up with Marc-Andre Fleury again, which would be insane, but you know.
Exactly. I don't really know which way it's gonna go. To me, it can go one of two ways. Either GMs are gonna be scared of doing what they did in the Vegas draft, which is giving up like essentially a team full of middle six forwards. And maybe they'll be a little bit, like you said, smarter about who they're protecting, a little bit more savvy with the trades. Instead of trading you guys essentially two middle six forwards to not take my top six forward, maybe I'll just let you take one of them.
Yeah.
Either that, or I could actually see going the opposite direction and the Seattle Kraken ending up with a team of what I would call good players with bad contracts and surprising a lot of people maybe in their first year with a playoff run, just because they will have some players that are good players, just contracts that teams can't afford anymore. But I don't think that they're going to be set up for sustained immediate success like the Vegas Golden Knights are, because of how many bad contracts teams are going to try to pawn off on them.
Well, I mean, to be fair to the Vegas Golden Knights too, the Vegas Golden Knights were realistically only set up for that one season of success, and then just by way of acquiring every big name free agent to hit the market, almost have made themselves into a perennial contender. They
Right.
essentially New York Yankeed their way into the playoffs, but it is what it is, right? As an expansion team, like, you do what you got to do, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure which way it's going to go. I could see it going either way with Seattle. I honestly, even if they don't end up with the best team, I mean, all things considered, that Pacific Division is going to be rough. I could see them, if they get the right mix of players, getting into the top three, because who in that division is really you have to worry about? I mean, you have to worry about the Edmonton Oilers just in the regular season anyway, obviously, because Connor McDavid in the regular season is just Wayne Gretzky reincarnated. You got to worry about the Vegas Golden Knights. Maybe potentially have to worry about the Flames or the Canucks. I think the Canucks are poised for a big offseason now that a lot of their bad contracts are off the books.
I think LA is probably going to have a stronger showing because those young players are only going to start getting better.
LA apparently might just be going like all in on this season, and I don't know why. Like,
because oh my god, I hate that. I hate when like teams that have a little like have tasted a little bit of success think like they're like the pin, like all of a sudden they have this winning mentality where like they have to be winning constantly. It's like, okay, listen, I get why Montreal fans feel entitled to win Stanley Cups. They've won 25 of them. Like, you've earned the right to be entitled. But like when teams like the Kings and stuff are like, oh, we're going all in, we're returning to our winning tradition. I'm like, what winning tradition? You won your first Stanley Cup like 7 years ago. Like, it's not like you have this long history of winning and tradition. Like, I also don't understand why they would want to jeopardize their process when they have consistently been ranked the number one prospect pool in the NHL. You know? Like, why would you risk that in trading? Because they've been linked to Jack Eichel a lot recently, and it's like, why would you trade away guys like Akil Thomas or fucking why can't I think of his name? Gabriel Velarde or Turcotte or any of these guys for a guy in Jack Eichel, listen, I know you know what you're getting in Jack Eichel as opposed to those young players, but Jack Eichel has played like one or two full NHL seasons in the last 5 years. He's been injured a lot, so I also just don't think he would fit with the LA Kings. So I don't know. LA's in a weird spot. I could see them being competitive though. Back to what my original point, like not like making the playoffs, but at least being like in the mix for most of the season.
I think that my only issue with them acquiring Jack Eichel is the fact that there's very clearly a hierarchy of succession put into place by the LA Kings, right? They have Anze Kopitar, and then they basically drafted Anze Kopitar 2.0 in Quentin Byfield, another big, heavy checking center who has the offensive talent to put up the points. So why would you then trade for Jack Eichel, who who knows how much longer Anze Kopitar is going to be playing? Let's say he even plays for another 3 years. What are you going to do if Quentin Byfield is ready next year? And now you have Eichel and Kopitar eating up the minutes. So now you can't play Byfield with Kopitar because, I mean, you could stick Byfield on a third line at that point, but wouldn't it make more sense to teach Byfield the ropes by having him play more closely alongside of Kopitar, maybe giving him some more power play time and maybe second line minutes here and there against some tough matchups just to be like, hey, here's what it takes to shut down these guys. But then what do you do with Jack Eichel? Do you put him on the third line? Like, you're not doing that. It's just a very odd idea to me for a team that, let's be honest here, the LA Kings are very much in the same position as the Montreal Canadiens, in my opinion. A older team with some core pieces that, if they get hot at the right time, could definitely go on a run. But really, what are the odds of that? You know, like, you have to look at it realistically and say, is it worth going all in on Jack Eichel, trading away the 3 first-round picks and a prospect that we need to give up for him just to not make the playoffs? Like, I don't know. I think the LA Kings just aren't thinking.
No, but from what I understand, the asking price for Jack Eichel apparently is just too steep, and most teams have bailed out on it now. So who knows what goes on there?
I think that the Buffalo Sabres are playing an incredibly dangerous game, honestly. And I think that they're trying to price teams out of the market so that they can say, well, we tried, but we just couldn't trade Jack for what he's worth. So then what are you going to have? A disgruntled Jack Eichel who hates your entire franchise because you wouldn't let him get a surgery that he felt he needed to, which is not a hockey issue at that point. It's a deeply personal issue. So you're just going to have an angry, pissed off Jack Eichel playing on a team he doesn't care for. And then what? He plays like he doesn't care anymore. His value goes down, and then you're just losing trade value at that point until he forces you to trade him away. Like, I think that...
They're playing a game of chicken with him, and I don't think it's going to work.
No, because I think the rest of the NHL is smart enough to say, well, let's be honest here. If Jack Eichel goes out next season and he only puts up like 60, 70 points, we know it's not because he can't put up more points. It's because he, A, isn't playing with anybody, and B, doesn't care anymore. Like, every team in the NHL is still going to want him, but that they know that you have to trade him at some point, so they're going to play hardball with you. You know, I think that this is really the best opportunity for the Buffalo Sabres to get as close to fair market value for a guy of his talents as possible. Because you're never going to get fair market value for a guy Jack Eichel. But I think this is as close as you're going to get him coming off a season where everyone knows he's kind of mad. So, like, they're going to lowball you a little bit because he came off an injured season. But, like, you're still trading for Jack Eichel. So, like, you know, as opposed to, like, what if he gets hurt again next year? Or what if he doesn't care and he looks like he doesn't care? You know, I think the Buffalo Sabres are playing a very stupid game, in my opinion, because they clearly want to keep him. But why? Like, why would you want to screw over Jack Eichel? Which sends just a great message, by the way, to any prospective young kids and free agents that are coming to your town. Hey, we don't care about you. We're going to tell you you can get a surgery, you can't get a surgery, because that's what we do here in Buffalo. And then we're going to force you to stay here? Like, is that.
Imagine they'd won the Connor McDavid lottery, and this was Connor McDavid they were doing this to.
Like, it's not a good look. Like, would you want to sign in Buffalo after all this nonsense?
Oh, absolutely not. This has been some of the worst management I've ever seen from a team.
I just I think that they need to trade Jack Eichel. And I know that you always want to keep a guy that puts butts in seats and you want to keep a guy to have a face of the franchise. But let's be honest here. You've not just messed up your hockey relationship with him. You've shattered the bridge of a personal relationship with Jack Eichel. Like, that bridge is gone because of what you've done to him.
Yeah, I don't know how you can come back from that, to be honest.
The only way I can see that bridge being repaired is with new ownership and a new GM, new head coach. I think, like, if every level of management gets rearranged, then you might have a shot. But otherwise, if the Pagulas are still in office and if that bonehead meathead that they have up in the GM's office is still there, it's not happening. I don't care how many head coaches you hire. Like,
Which is probably been like, what, 4 or 5 now?
which, it's funny because everyone started talking about, like, is Jack Eichel a coach killer? It's like, I just think that the roster of the whole entire Buffalo Sabres organization is a coach killer. Like, the GM.
What's the coach supposed to do when they're icing a team that bad?
Yeah, like, the GM basically hands you, like, a paper napkin with ham scraps and a spork and says, here, make me a 5-star 5-course meal. And then when you return to him a Happy Meal, he gets mad about it. Like, you're not giving me anything to work with. I don't know. Buffalo's kind of... They're Buffalo. Yeah, they're Buffalo. But they are a team to watch this offseason. There are several teams to kind of keep an eye on this offseason. Like I mentioned, I think the Canucks might be in a position, most of their bad contracts are coming off the books. They've got still a couple of ones that they have to wait for, like next year. Both the Louis Eriksson and the Roberto Luongo recapture penalty will be completely off the books. The Holtby contract comes off the book, which is not a bad contract, but, you can bring up Michael DiPietro at that point. And then, the Roussel contract, that comes off the books next year. So, yeah, a lot of your more questionable contracts are due up soon. So I think that this year, and then especially next season, the Canucks are kind of in for some big, big moves. I expect the Oilers to be active in the goaltender market. I hope, please, for the love of God. I guess before we kind of start to wrap up, who are you most going to be watching besides the Rangers this offseason?
Probably, honestly, the Oilers and the Maple Leafs. I want to see how Toronto manages to build, or what kind of half-ass scheme they come up with to ice a roster this year. And Edmonton, I want to see if they actually finally, decide to try to help Connor or not.
So you're looking for maybe a goaltender in Edmonton, some defense, something.
A goaltender, probably some more depth up front. I mean, they've been linked to Zach Hyman, which I think is a good move for them. Toronto, who knows, bro? I don't even know what I'm looking for from Toronto. I'm curious to see what Kyle Dubas comes up with in that, like, harebrain of his, bro. Like, he's going to come up with some backwards-ass logic to sign a guy like Taylor Hall and be like, he's going to make us a better defensive team. It's like, what?
Look at his defensive advanced statistics.
Look at his Corsi numbers. It's like, yeah, but, like, he's not a defensive player. Okay.
I mean, they've apparently been talking, like, some rumors are flying around, like, very unconfirmed, not from any real reputable sources, but, like, there's been talk amongst, hockey fans in general about Mitch Marner getting moved, which would, like, why would you move Mitch Marner? But
why would you trade your best player?
When you don't have to, because he's clearly happy playing in Toronto. Like, he loves playing with Austin Matthews, so...
Bro, he says, you can tell he loves it. He's like one of the only guys on the ice that actually cares every night.
And everyone's like, why isn't Mitch Marner scoring goals in the playoffs? It's like, I don't know, because he's a playmaker.
That was my favorite. They're like, why doesn't he have any power play goals? And you look at it, and it's like 16 power play assists, and Austin Matthews like 16 power play goals. It's like, oh, I wonder why he doesn't have any goals.
Like, we're
Like,
not sitting here asking why Nick Backstrom isn't scoring goals. Why the hell would you expect Mitch Marner to score goals? Like,
it's like being like, yo, Hank Sedin's a real good hockey player and all, but like he just doesn't score goals. Like the man's put up 100 points by way of scoring like 97 assists. Like what? Yeah, he just doesn't score though. He's just not good enough.
primetime Joe Thornton, bro, just didn't score enough goals. I don't know what to tell you.
Just not good. Turn Jonathan Cheechoo into a 50-goal scorer. Not good enough.
So, I mean, I'll be watching the Leafs just because it's always fun to watch the Leafs. I'm interested to see what the Blackhawks do this offseason. I'm curious to see if they, getting healthy, they take the results of last season and say, hey, maybe if we were fully healthy, we can make something out of this team. So I'm curious to see if they're pulling any strings behind the scenes. So I think the Leafs, the Blackhawks, with a taste of Edmonton Oilers watching, because for the love of Christ, please sign a goaltender that's not named Mike Smith and isn't some plug. Like, don't go out and sign like.
Bro, they're gonna sign Big Save Dave.
I guess I wouldn't be super angry, but I would be disappointed. Like, can we actually get like a competent starting goaltender in Edmonton? I don't care how
Freddie
like
Anderson.
yeah, like honestly, like I don't care that Mike Smith actually got a Vezina vote, and I don't care that his stats weren't that good. D did not do what he needed to do, and he looked like absolute toss pot in the playoffs. Like,
I mean, he's part of the reason they got blown off the ice in the first round again.
this isn't a team like the New York Rangers are at this point, who are looking at players and say, well, they would be nice in the playoffs, but really we're focused on the regular season because we're taking that next step. Like, you should be acquiring players, and specifically goalies, who have a history of playoff success, because Mike Smith did what he always does, which is get into the playoffs and then like kind of fall apart. Like, I think he had one deep run with the Coyotes, and the rest of the time he was just falling apart left, right, and center. So it's like, I don't know, maybe can we get a goalie that like doesn't choke in the playoffs? Like,
I mean, that would be smart though. That would imply Ken Holland still knows what he's doing.
which I don't understand why Ken Holland of all people doesn't get that concept.
Considering he went from, Osgood to Hasek to Osgood back to fucking Jimmy Howard. Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like having good goaltending was always a bedrock of those winning teams he had.
So, I don't know, but it's going to be interesting offseason. Do you have any final thoughts to say on the 2020-2021 NHL season as a whole?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was definitely different. Definitely different.
Definitely different, definitely unique. I'm glad that we were able to get to a full season, and I'm very, very excited for next season. Probably one of my most anticipated seasons ever, I think. Really ever, probably since, I would say, 2015, when the Islanders started acquiring all those players. One of my most anticipated seasons ever. I'm very, very much looking forward to next season. So quick schedule update. We will be doing a live expansion draft reaction to the Seattle Kraken. We will be doing a live top 10 picks reaction to the NHL entry draft. Obviously, we will be doing some preview episodes, like free agency previews, and then our free agency discussions as that goes along. And then if there's some dead time here and there, we might throw out some funny random episodes like we did last year, like when we talked about international teams and stuff like that. So definitely keep your ears glued to the ground, keep your eyes glued to the Twitter account and the channel, because we'll be posting updates there. Again, I want to thank everyone who watched any or listened to any of this podcast at all this season. Our second full season down in the books. Looking forward to our third season next year. Kind of crazy to think that we're already going to be on our third. season of this podcast next season. But, bigger and better things are coming. Maybe next season we can work out a way to do some video with the podcast. I mean, this season we already took the transition from just being on YouTube to the streaming platform, so that was a big step for us. Maybe we'll try to work in some video things for next season. Maybe we'll try to get some interviews. Maybe, I don't know, as COVID kind of relaxes, maybe we could get some interviews or maybe some phone interviews with some local players or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be in the works. Definitely want to keep getting bigger and better with the podcast for you guys. So, again, I just want to thank everyone who appeared on this podcast, obviously Steve and Tim and any of our friends that were on the podcast this year. I want to thank everyone who watched or listened to any episode, really. And like I said, next episode will be the start of our 2021-2022 NHL season podcast. So for the last time for this season, until 2-3 weeks from now for the expansion draft, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.